Serious? Former inmates of Reddit, what's solitary confinement really like? You sit in a room with nothing to do all day, 23 hours locked down with 1 hour allowed outside in a cage alone, or you can shower, or use the phone. Some guards are really lazy and offer inmates 2 lunch or dinner trays instead of letting people out, and most inmates in the solitary unit agree to the deal because they are starving. Normally in a normal general pop unit you eat other food along with meals because the portions are smaller than a Happy Meal. So it's a sudden shock when you eat little to no food. The head of the kitchen told me that all 3 meals every inmate eats a day costs the facility $0.91 total per inmate. Some people have books if they aren't insane and it keeps the unit quiet, but most people are banging on the doors or just plain screaming for hours. You can hear other cells and the vents and people going crazy, especially during Christmas time. Some guys go insane. I've seen people purposely clog toilets to get staff in riot gear to come to their cell, but they spend about 6-10 hours covering their entire floor with soap very heavily. When the riot team tries to come in, they will start throwing their fesses at them and cups of pee. The floor is slippery and the riot team eats crap as they try to enter the cell with the guy in the back of the cell. They continuously spray pepper spray all over the cell, which then goes all in the unit and at other cells, and it's really annoying. Some guys go nuts the other way and are on suicide watch, and the jail needs to pay someone to sit outside their door all day. It's a dark place. This sounds like actual torture. 21 days for fighting at one institution. Shower in the cell. A hole in the pillow contained a deck of 51 playing cards, 2 pencils, a pocket testament, and a picture of a naked woman. Air conditioned. Except for the boredom, it wasn't that bad. I read the testament twice and played solitaire a lot. Sold food once to my neighbor for sleeping pills that didn't work, and never tried to self-medicate again. 10 days for disrespect at another. Got the porter to bring me books, since the COs wouldn't let me get any from the cart. Escorted to the showers one at a time whenever you signed up for the shower list. Barred cells, so it was easier to trade books and food with neighbors. No AC and crappy heat, but luckily it wasn't hot or cold. Absolute heck. I was in solitary for 3 days as a 15-year-old, which is nothing in a world where adult prisoners can spend a month or more in there. No clothes, no books, a steel bed, and the room was kept very cold. I was allowed a Bible for 1 hour a day. The rest of my time was spent staring at the wall. I was locked up for 3 days. Because of the nature of my arrest, I was put into protective custody. It was basically a small enclosure with a toilet, sink and steel bench. Lights are on 24/7. I was across from another cell with 8 guys, so they knew I was in there for something bad. They tried to get my attention. I was fed twice a day, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the morning and a burrito at night. I could not shower, brush my teeth, or even make a phone call. No blankets, pillows or toilet paper. The cell reeks of urine and vomit. The biggest mind frick was not knowing how much time had passed. You did not know what day it was or if it were day or night. The anxiety is unbearable. You start to think of ways to get out, dead or alive. The scariest thing is the belief that someone will forget about you and you will starve to death, or if another Katrina happened and the guards will leave you to die. The guards are pretty sadistic. I understand that they have to be tough, but they were not professional. I was eventually bailed out and my legal case got resolved. State juvie, early 90s. 5 feet x 5 feet cell with a drain in the center. Crap stains, nut stains, reeks of pee. They strip you down to the community boxes and leave you in there. Need to go to the bathroom, see the drain. Gotta poop, waffle, stomp it. It's also cold, winter, so you freeze your butt off. Nothing to do for hours. Oh, you got sick because you were too cold? Here is a U-Haul blanket and now you are on dead time. Time doesn't count until you get better. Food, chicken noodle water in a cup. Not soup, because if you get 3 noodles in it you got lucky. Never saw any chicken bits. Your first 15 hours in there you don't want to touch anything. After that you just say fuck it because you can't stand anymore, so sit in someone else's crap. MT Meeks, D&D Block A then B, later Thagard Hall. I will say I caused a shitstorm while I was there and got a full release at 5 months on a 12-month sentence to an external drug rehab, when I never did drugs, lol. I slept about 15 hours a day. The lights are always on. They do give you a book every Sunday if you behave enough. They gave me a book called Man in the Wire Cage for my first book. I laughed at the irony there. Maybe the only smile I had in there. You don't get to talk to anybody. There's also a camera on you at all times even if you're taking a dump. The guy in the cell next to me was on a hunger strike and would yell every hour of every day and you could hear them trying to force feed him. Which almost always resulted in violence of some sort. It's heck. Pure heck. I was placed in solitary in TDCJ for 2 weeks for being set up with a shank and a scribbled note saying I was going to murder someone. Crap sucked. South Texas heat in an enclosed space with no direct facing fan was brutal. I read the same book several times, that stupid glittering vampire book for teens, and masturbated till I couldn't anymore. And when I finally saw a guard or SSI, inarmed worker, I'd try to get smokes and some weed and talk a little bit. It was definitely heck. I'll go on the run before I go back to that crap. That incident made me lose my low risk clarification, which meant I couldn't go out of prison grounds for work. I had been mowing parts of the city with an officer riding by every hour on horseback. Then I got stuck on laundry. I definitely started having visual hallucinations like color changes and stuff and slight shape distortions. I was 12. I was sent to juvenile jail. My crime was refusing to attend school. For that I got 1 week in a small cell alone. It had a thin mattress, and a thin blanket, and a toilet. Lights on at all times. Oh, and don't forget a camera on me 24/7. I was allowed out for 1 hour a day, to shower, every other day, or exercise. 2 books, though I was allowed to get new ones during my 1 hour out a day. 3 meals eaten in cell. I didn't interact with anyone but the guard who escorted me alone for my hour activity. I wasn't let out to attend school in the facility, because they didn't want me around anyone else. Which makes me laugh given why I was there. The reason for all of this was that they didn't want me around actual criminals. The second time I spent 30 days. I was 15 and in a bad phase of my bipolar. Assaulted a cop. Resisted arrest after destroying my house. Mom decided jail would help my mental issues instead of therapy. Given my mental illness I was again stuck in that horrid cell alone. For me it was torture. I can't sleep with lights on and wasn't allowed to cover my face with the blanket. The cameras made me paranoid. That feeling of being watched eats at you. In fact to this day if I am alone in say my bedroom I get antsy cause I feel that feeling of being watched. It's surprising how long it stays with you. Being allowed books was a lifesaver but I was a fast reader and could easily finish my 2 books long before I'd get new ones. I'd spend a lot of time laying on my bed or pacing the small room trying to breathe and digging my nails into my arms. I am claustrophobic. I was trying to stop feeling like the room WQS going to fall in around me. I'm 27 no, and so freaking glad I will never ever be in jail again. I stay out of trouble because I'll be damned if I am going back to that kind of heck. You couldn't cover your face with the blanket. That is seriously what puts it over the edge for torture emo. I gave serious thought on hurting myself to get out of solitary. I never did go that far, but I did give it some thought. I was only in there for 2 weeks, if I remember correctly, but it felt so much longer than that. I was put in by a particular power-hungry deputy who claimed I was resisting him, when all I did was stand up from looking at the books on a bottom shelf. He yelled out, "Don't walk up on me like that, inmate." Before I could do or say anything he kicks me over and I find myself in solitary. I was put in right after breakfast. The room had a metal bed with a toilet attached at the end. No blankets, no sheets, nothing. The light always stayed on. There were no windows. The long window on the door was covered. Even though I could peek through the cracks there was nothing to see. Eventually lunch came. I was chowing down on a plain wheat bread with what was supposed to be bologna. I had taken maybe 4 bites. When dinner was served, I figured, what the frick? But okay, this guy's a dong so expect this crap. I got tired of being in my mind, making up worlds and characters. I used to play D&D a lot, and fell asleep. I wake up to banging on my door and a deputy say free time. Like an idiot I get up and wait for the door to click open. Never does. Nothing I can do. I go back to sleep. Again I am woken up to lunch. No idea what happened to breakfast. But okay. I just eat it and try not to let it get to me. Well, it does eventually. I completely lost track of time. fricked up my sleep schedule and made me worry about my sanity in general. What if I was flushing my meals? Was I eating without remembering? Sometimes the deputy in question would wake me up, tell me to gather my crap, which I had nothing because they would not let me take anything, and let me out only to put me in another solitary cell. I could hear him giggle when he walked away. Yeah, I admit I did end up yelling like mad, but not for very long. My voice gave out. Eventually I did get out. I would have bet my life I was in there for months if not longer, but turns out it was only a little over 3 weeks. As others have said, I will never go back in there. I don't care the cost. I spent 8 months in solitary confinement when I had just turned 18. I had done nothing wrong except turn 18 in a juvenile facility. Everything was white. White walls, white painted window, thin white blanket against the artificial cold. White light on every hour of the day and night was just a memory. I was allowed 1 magazine a day, and I soon ran through their small stack of magazines. There was nothing, except some scant food pushed through the door sometimes only twice a day. Rotten milk that made me sick. No visitors. 3-minute phone call once a week if I was lucky. I cried when I woke up, praying to God that he would take me at night. I never believed before. I tried to kill myself by tying my bra around my neck, but I ripped it off instinctually as I was losing consciousness and I wept. I did not know when it would end and one day it just did. I did 2 days in solitary the first time I ever got in any trouble with the law. I was in jail for 6 days, 2 of which were in solitary confinement. There's no other feeling like it. Still to this day I can't stay in a room without windows without the door open. As if it wasn't bad enough being in solitary, I was also detoxing. Just imagine. 4 white walls, no windows, a light that stays on 24/7, a 1-inch thick pad to lay on and a toilet and alcohol withdrawal. It was so awful. I cannot even imagine spending more than a week in there. I'd go completely insane. I've been through alcohol withdrawal many times. Usually I ended up in a hospital and was given Ativan. I cannot imagine the horror you must have went through. It is inhumane and should not be allowed. People can die that way. I hope you are doing better now. I just had 4 years sober. I was manic at 18 and spent 3 weeks in solitary. I was allowed 1 book at a time. I worked out, slept, and read and drew a lot. This was in city jail. I still thought it was real peaceful and had a nice time to find myself. That actually doesn't sound too bad. Was in juvenile detention for a week. For a crime I was later proved innocent of, and they kept me in solitary the entire time because my charges were a violent felony. My solitary was kind of tame compared to that of adult prisons in the sense that I was out of the cell for 4 hours a day and got to interact with the other people in solitary to watch movies and stuff. But it still sucked butt. To start, it was freaking disgusting in those cells. Smelled like crap. There were stains from God knows what everywhere, and there were a crap ton of roaches and spiders. One of the guys I spent rec time with got some kind of herpes from the bedmat they gave him. There was a small bulletproof window that I could see out of if I stood on my tiptoes. That window is what kept me sane. It was the only way I knew if it was day or night. Lights were on 24/7, and it was an escape for my brain. The view I had was of a junkyard that was next to the JDC, and I still can clearly picture it in my head. There was also a bird's nest on the outside ledge of the window, and that helped keep me company. They gave me 2 books on my first night. One was one of those books you would use to introduce first graders to reading and was about Star Wars. The other was a mystery novel called Split Second. I read both of those multiple times until my 5th day when the guards decided to open up all the cell doors in the solitary block to give us a treat because we were all on good behavior, and I traded books with the dude in the cell next to me. Outside of my cell, I got between 2 and 4 hours of rec time with these 2 other kids that were also in solitary. We became pretty good friends and we still keep in touch. On days where we got 4 hours, we had 2 different sections of rec time. We could either watch a movie and then play basketball outside, watch 2 movies, or play basketball for 4 hours. We all would vote and it almost always ended up being a movie and basketball. Food was crap. Breakfast was at what I would estimate to be about 5:30 am. Normally generic brand cereal and milk with a muffin or something. Lunch at maybe 10:30 or 11 am, which was always a ham and cheese sandwich. Dinner at about 4:30 pm, which was just like the kind of lunch you'd get at school. A snack at about 7 pm, which was a pack of peanut butter crackers. I remember losing my snack one day on the basketball court when me and this other kid were playing HORSE and agreed that the loser had to give the winner his snack. I, of course, lost and was starving until breakfast. That was the only time I did that. I was in solitary confinement for about a week as a 16-year-old in a juvenile detention facility. About 5 years ago, I had a light on and was able to have staff bring me books. I got put in there after yelling at a court-ordered therapist for advising the judge not to let me out to go to my grandmother's funeral. I would say having to mourn her death that first week as a 16-year-old by myself for 23 hours a day was a traumatic experience. My life forever changed in good ways and bad ways after this happened, and up to this day I have pain for never being able to say goodbye to my grandma. Just a little side note. The night before my grandma passed, I had a dream she was in and she told me my grandpa was going to die. My grandpa is still alive to this day, but I lost touch with him since my grandma died, and I think that was what she was trying to communicate to me. I didn't understand at the time. It's not as bad as some think. I served time as a juvenile for almost a year in a Canadian detention center. After a dispute between me and another inmate, we were both sent to solitary confinement for 72 hours. He may have been longer, I'm not sure. In my case, solitary meant 23 hours alone indoors with a bed and toilet. We got 2 meals a day, never spoiled or moldy, just unseasoned. There were small portions but not enough to starve somebody. People generally didn't scream or bang on the walls because there was no motivation to. Despite how it is often portrayed, my experience and those of friends that have served hard time in maximum security adult prisons was not torture. It was simply boring. I think the key word here is Canadian. Looks like it might be a lot worse south of the border. In the hole it's really crappy. You wake up, have no idea what time it is. You can't tell if it's day or night. I was in a cell with nothing but a roll of toilet paper for 2 weeks. Guards don't even talk to you. They just hand you a tray of food and leave. Then they come pick it up whenever they feel like it. You get to shower if they feel like it. The shower is so small your butt nearly touches the cold wall while you're standing directly in front of the water. Most days I didn't shower cause what's the fricking point, you know? Worst 2 weeks of my life. If you're curious why I was in the hole, it's because a few guys were trying to beat up 18-year-old me. They threw me in the hole for 2 weeks for my protection. What a terrible 2 weeks. They put you in 23-hour lockdown. Only come out for a shower in the pod, or if disciplinary, they'll attach it to your cell. Between 4 am to 11 pm they take your mattress and all 3 daily meals are cooked into what they call a loaf. No books except a Bible, nothing else to do or use besides thoughts. Keep yourself occupied or you will go insane. Read a lot. You'll start to go crazy after a few hours and fantasize about breaking out and or killing yourself. But it will come to pass, though it reoccurs in waves. When you get out it may take a few days or even weeks to retain your speaking voice. I still have nightmares on the regular about it. 3 years out now. There's no end in sight. Source: did time in juvenile solitary lockup. Went in an honor student with some emotional issues. Had symptoms of PTSD from severe child abuse that were never addressed beforehand. Came out with those symptoms heightened to the point that I can barely function. Even years of therapy later. My crime? I missed too much school, being in and out of mental institutions and the like. The confinement cell were on the upper floor of the prison in our case. Let me just tell you that with everything that you will read in this topic, the yelling, the crazy, the starving, the loneliness, the hardest for me was the sleepless night. There is no AC in prison and even less in confinement. Try to imagine yourself in a small room surrounded by 4 concrete walls with only small vents. Mostly for the smell, I always thought. It gets too hot during the summer. Sleeping is nearly impossible. I remember just being in sleep deprivation, always sweating. I just couldn't stand myself. My patience was completely gone. I was just unhinged, ready to pop. I understand fairly well those who can't handle it and go crazy. I did 3 months in a 3-person cell by myself. Got to shower out of the cell, but other than those 5 minutes I was locked in 24 hours. Honestly not bad at all. Basically sleep, count meals so I don't get confused about the time of day, and watch whatever was on TV. I don't think most people in solitary get a TV. That would be a game changer. Fetchu? Boring. I'm very content in my own solitude, so as long as I had a book and a bag of cereal, I could deal with it pretty easily. Now, pre-trial, I spent 22 days in psych because the police chief said I was a little nuts. I was kept naked in a concrete dry cell with nothing but a plastic boat for sleeping, no mattress, and a thin blanket. Food came under the door. No books, no TV, no radio, no rec, no visitors. 22 days alone in that room. Yeah, it sucked, but I made it out. She was a breeze compared to that. I did 10 days for refusing a work assignment. Let someone else pick up trash along the highway. 8x10 cinder block cell. Lucked up with a window. There must have been a little league field nearby, because I enjoyed the click of aluminum bats and cheering most evenings. Cot fixed to wall on one side. On the other a single sheet metal fixture with toilet, sink, and useless opaque metal looking glass. Was made by Bayer as I recall. No movement other than to shower every third day. I remember after I was out a couple days, my legs were sore from just regular moving about. I've been locked up for 5 or 6 years of my life. I've done quite a bit in solitary confinement and it really depended upon the institution what it was like. If it was a bad place, I'd go to war. Frick it, let's get crazy. If I got furious and wanted to fight, I could start one. Once you started it, the code said you had to follow it through, because if you cuffed up you were a bee. But mostly it was working out, eating, sleeping, reading and jacking off. At least until that got boring and then you started a fight with the COs. Heck yes. I already told my lawyer, but basically I was told that I was lucky additional charges weren't added to what I was there for. And that's how they handle people acting up like I was, and to suck it up. Oh, and I shouldn't have been there in the first place, all that crap. All in all, I was glad I hurt that bastard bad enough to embarrass him or whatever, because that's all I'll ever get out of it. I realized after all of this happened, of course, the truth of all of these things, but still I thought I was going to die in that place. That's what the feeling is I remember most. You're alone. And at someone else's mercy. There isn't anything you can do once you're in that system. Nothing. I got out the 16th of August 2015, and I still haven't gotten my money back either. $102.33. Well, I wasn't in jail, but I was in sort of a solitary confinement when I was living with my dad. For a while he grounded me. During that punishment, I wasn't allowed out of my room to go pee or eat or shower without his permission, and I couldn't peek out of my room and ask either. I had to wait until my dad felt like asking me. He worked from 2 AM to the afternoon after I got out of school, and during those times, my family made sure I stayed in my room. I went to school and whatnot, but when I got there, I wasn't allowed to talk about anything at home. So, no one knew about my situation. If my teachers called him to say anything, my time would restart, and he never told me how long my punishment would end. It was until further notice. I had no TV, no phone, nothing, just clothes and a bed, no books, nothing to draw with, etc. I decided to start sneaking out during the day to go to the library so that I couldn't go insane and try to off myself. My dad even threatened to move me into the garage so that he wouldn't have to see me. I should mention that I was, like, 13. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.